What are we going to accept as normal? And if we know it's not normal, how are we going to tell other parents, other families about how their life can change and shift for the better? Today's story is about a mother and child and how their lives were dramatically improved through simple shifts of chiropractic adjustments. We're also going to talk about being brave enough to be vulnerable in telling our story, about hard stories. It's not all Disney. And about how hope is an active rebellion and how we can share that with others. I'm Jenna Quinton, founder of Adjust Your Media, and today's host on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure Stories of Innate podcast. I really want you to be able to dig into this episode, but I also want to tell you that there is support for you. If at the end you're feeling overwhelmed with, wow, I have these stories and I want to share them, but I don't know how, I'm here to support you with Adjust Your Marketing Blueprint, which is a membership for chiropractors and their teams to be able to tell those stories. So if you're interested in more information about that, you'll get the link in the show notes. Now let's dig in. So today on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure Stories of Innate is Dr. Devin Verana. She's a mama bear. She's a Kansas princess. She's all country as the song goes. She's a chiropractor, speaker, coach, and she founded the Big Idea Experience with her husband, Dr. Joey. So welcome, Dr. Devin.
Hello, Miss Jenna. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I would love for you to tell us a story today. How did chiropractic improve someone's life?
So I would choose the tale of a mother and child who struggled for months that became years. Trouble with colic, then trouble with ear infections, trouble with sleeping, trouble with bonding, which turns into a fatigued, overwhelmed, guilt and shame-ridden mother.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not a sick child, but not a well child. Neither of them living, their potential and in full expression of what could be, and enters the game of chiropractic and tried everything. Now we're, baby's 2 years old, mom is 2 years in, and someone finally says, hey, have you thought about getting this child checked? Kids get adjusted? Absolutely. Yeah. Is it safe? What's it like? Child gets adjusted, sleeps a little bit better. Child gets checked and adjusted again. All things start to shift. Sleep starts to get better. Poop is better regulated. Immune system issues go away. Baby's shining brighter. All of the sudden, mom shining a whole lot brighter. As the layers peel back, we look at a traumatic birth. We look at a stressful pregnancy, a lot of fear, a lot of chaos that had added up in the mother's nervous system, that had added up in the child's nervous system. And not only was the health of the child changed, the health of the mother, physical, mental, emotional health changed for both, bonding of both. And then you look at the ripple effect of how that affects everyone around them. But said mother happens to be a chiropractic student who instantly starts to wonder why she didn't know about chiropractic 2 years sooner, and then devotes her life to serving mothers and serving children. And said child just turned 20 and is going to be a chiropractor. And this is my story. This is my son's story. And I love getting to retell it because I forget the power of it. Because chiropractic is now such a part of my life that I forget black and white life that used to be, and now it's like bright colors and life expression and innate and above, down, inside out. It's all like who we are. But as my son did turn 20 here this week, and we sat and talked about our evolution as a mother and child, and now he's going to be a chiropractor, and it literally has changed our life in more ways than I could ever count.
Yeah, and you say so many key words there and phrases. Like you said, not well. And even as your young mother self, that intuition that you felt of he's just not well, not vibrating at that high potential that you knew he had.
Yeah, it never felt normal. Although it maybe was treated that way in a pediatrician's office, it never felt normal for him to struggle with these things or to have this type of cough or to not sleep and to be told, you just got a fussy one or
Mhm.
ear infections are normal. None of what I was watching looked normal. And
Mhm.
I refuse to accept that normal for myself or for him. And you're right. The mom always knows. And I mean, it is a game changer when that intuition and that knowing is not only acknowledged, which I think it is more in holistic and natural and chiropractic offices. But when practitioners started to tell me not only like that mother's intuition is real, but they would ask me, what do you think? What do you see?
Mhm.
All of the sudden, I'm not only being acknowledged, I'm being respected, where I had for 2 years been told, like, basically, you're just doing a bad job. You must not be feeding him right, burping him right, changing him right. You didn't birth him right. And so, where does the story of mom guilt start? It starts, usually in the beginning. And when you're up all night going like, God, like, what am I doing wrong? Like
Mhm.
our basic instinct is to nurture our child, protect our child. And it takes a heavy toll when you feel like you can't do that. And you can see that something's wrong, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said another word that I want to highlight, which is shift.
Mm.
What you noticed and what we're looking for, maybe it isn't these giant stood up from a wheelchair, and walked. What we're looking for in any of these things is that shift. And I love that you told your son's story. I told my son's story. If you go back, the episode with Dr. Tony Ebel, I talk about my son and the honestly, I can't even say the words, but the vaccine injury that he suffered and the shift that I saw when he got on a swing set and he would swing. Nobody else cares about that. That's not a marker in a pediatrician's office. Does your child swing or not? And then that goal setting of nobody says that as a goal. I would like my child to be able to swing,
Right.
but that word shift,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that relieves a lot of guilt and shame too. When what are we looking for? We're looking for this shift, this steps towards the light, this step towards wholeness and wellness. And I think that that's a beautiful word to have used.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me what an adjustment is, right? It's oftentimes because of how we're brought up, it's, you take the pill, the symptom goes away. And so it's common for people to say, well, how many times do I have to come? And is each adjustment is a shift. Each adjustment is an unlocking of newer and higher potential and optimization of your system. And it's I think the self-sabotage that I see in our culture that's rampant is that we accept these things as normal, and healing seems so big and so far away, and it all seems so hard and so overwhelming that we just start to accept less and less and less, and the light gets more dim and dim and dim. When really, like, it's the dimmer switch, right? Each adjustment's just it's making it a little brighter and a little brighter. And you do have the miracle. That's why we say expect miracles. It's everywhere in my life and in my practice, where it's like I've seen those. They don't happen every single time in the same intensity, but they're always happening
Hmm.
because the light is always getting brighter when you make an adjustment to someone's system and you allow their nervous system to come back online just a little bit brighter.
Yes, absolutely. So, I want to talk about these transformations, the transformation in these stories in our lives. And we've both been around long enough to know it isn't all Disney. And I was thinking about the meme or the story about hot water and how hot water makes a carrot soft, it makes an egg hard, and coffee actually transforms that hot water. So, I want to ask, how do you find joy? How do you, through all of the hard stories, how do you keep putting on the colorful hats, the feathers? How do you not just fade to black?
What a good question. Especially, I feel like in this time in history when, you know, being apathetic just about life in general or the collective and, the chaos of the last few years, you see a lot of people choosing to just go, like, the hope is kind of dimming down. And so I think hope is an act of rebellion these days. And it is the prayer I hope that each of us can move into a new year with, because what's the alternative, right? I mean, I've faced death and sickness and death multiple times. We all have our hardships and our boiling water. And I turn to people like Tony Robbins, who invited me to the concept that what if this is happening for you and not to you? I turn to Einstein, who says either you believe that everything is a miracle and that the world is a friendly universe, or you don't. And I do believe God is good. Unwaveringly, I believe God is good. I unwaveringly believe that there is a grand plan that I can't see all of it. I can only see what's kind of right in front of me. And sometimes that really sucks. And I have to turn to my faith. I have to turn to, this knowing of, okay, I've lived through everything else. I can live through this too.
Mm.
And I go back to maybe the story that I started with, of that version of me that was so tired and so exhausted and felt like a failure as a mother. Had I not gone through that horrific birth and then had every hardship with Roman and felt the depth of the despair, then I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think
Right.
how many mothers I've adjusted, how many children I've adjusted, how much that I've been able to transmute the darkness into the light. It's all a gift. All of the
Yeah.
pain had purpose, because God's proven that to me over and over. It's easier and easier to trust him when you hit the hot water,
Yeah.
because it's proved itself to you many times before, and you just know it's going to again.
Yes. Well, and even this talk about color and black, I can't remember what book it was, some children's fantasy book, where they could see the color black.
Mm.
And they said, because colors are refracted light and black absorbs it, so in this world, certain people could see the color black, and it wasn't just an absence of light, and it was the best color.
Mm.
And it is that what if we could transmute the darkness
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah, well, and it's detaching from the idea that it's bad.
Mm,
I mean, and I have to hold that to a really tough set of circumstances, like, when my mom died, or when I'm comforting the mother who just lost a child, or someone who's diagnosed with stage 4 aggressive cancer. It is tough to live these words in certain circumstances, but it's all the more when community and village shows up and says, like, there's purpose in this. Let's lean into it together and figure out what's on the other side of this mountain. So it's certainly not easy. It's certainly not all Disney. And for me, the anchor of trust is, it's the only way forward, because otherwise I'm choosing suffering. I'm choosing despair. And if I give up hope, that impacts everyone around me. And so again, that's my act of rebellion, is to choose hope.
yes, yes. As I thought about sharing these stories and the hard stories that are the fabric of your being, of my being, I went back to one of my first stories. And so I was 19 years old, living at home with my family. I'm the second oldest of 10. So we had 1 year old twins at that time. And my grandpa was under hospice care with us. And hospice care is what it is. They said, oh, we brought him home from the hospital. It was like, Grandpa will be with us for maybe a week. So me and my two sisters, we move out of our bedroom. We move the hospital bed in. We're sleeping on the couch. Grandpa will be with us maybe a week. 4 months later,
Mm.
he lived well and he lived longer because the love and the attention, but he was bedridden for 4 months,
Mm.
living in my bedroom, the whole 9 yards of sponge baths and catheter. And, first thing you do in the morning is empty that catheter bag, all of those things. Well, what it came to, though, was it was the first story that I ever got published was about my grandpa. So this magazine is January 2008, Focus on the Family, published my first story. The first time I got paid for writing a story was about my grandpa, was about that hard time that was so precious and so beautiful and became part of who I am. my process in that was writing it, publishing it. And it was the first time that I really realized that part of my only way through is to tell the story.
Mhm.
So I want to know what's part of your process for knowing when and what stories you're ready to share.
I think for me, one of my maybe gifts is gab. And so, talking and storytelling and connecting has been a part of who I am since I was a little girl. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been almost selfishly therapy to be given opportunities to share a story. And it took braving it maybe a few times, but whether it's from a stage or one-on-one, seeing what happens on the other side of braving that vulnerability to open those pieces and share, then inevitably here comes a person, 5 people, 10 people going, oh my gosh, it creates this resonant tone with another person or another group of people. And then it's not just me that heals because I get to move that energy and talk about it from a different perspective. Well, now I just connected a golden thread and now other people are healing. And so stories, there's just so much power there. And there's so much trust that can then be created for practitioners with patients, for friends that become, deeper friends. For my husband and I have lived through a number of challenges together in our time dating and being married. And we've grown closer each time. And so each time that, I choose to open my heart and just let the words come out, I'm not even the only one that benefits, but I do always feel this reprieve. And then I get connection out of it too. So it's why hold it in?
Yeah.
Why not tell the story?
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite books, and now I can't see the title, but is by William Zenzer, and he talks about writing about your life. And he said, I'm going to summarize, but basically, God gives his best stories to people who will tell them. And I've
Mhm.
really taken that as the challenge, like you said, the responsibility of if I've been given this, then it's my responsibility for such a time as this, which we love to quote.
And Jenna, with that, I feel this nudge from our good friend Denise, where it's not just my story, it's her story. I get a chance to tell my mom's story, to tell Denise's
Mm,
story, to tell, the first death in my practice was a little 2-year-old girl, and the anniversary was recent, and was praying about her, and I can just see her. And her mom came in to get adjusted, and we're having that moment, and there's so much pain in it, and yet like I've told her story across the country in different
yeah.
presentations, and I can see her saying like, thank you for telling my story. Like her death has taught us all so much, and we've shared that story. And so it's you telling your grandpa's story. It's what literally connects all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to make sure because we both like to talk and we both love to share. You know, you love to share these, like you said, on stages across the country, across the world. You love to do videos. Everybody can see, your videos that you share. But what about chiropractors who say, yeah, I see miracles happen in my office. I have things in my life, stories that I want to share, but I'm not you. I'm shy, I'm introverted. What do you say about just that broader aspect of sharing their stories?
A couple things come to mind, just with anybody, because it could be a chiropractor who sees it. It could be a patient who lives it, because we're always asking people to either share a Google review or a testimonial, and not to get more business, but to
Right.
tell a chiropractic story, because so few people, number one, get adjusted, but also know what nervous system based chiropractic is. They associate it with pain. So we need this. The stories are essential, is what I would say. Without the stories, there are mothers like myself and children like my son who are suffering, who are crying, who are not sleeping because they don't know. The stories are essential, is the first thing I would say. To the practitioner, maybe with a little tougher love, I would say it's not about you. And
Mm,
it's selfish to hide behind a personality trait that you choose to tell yourself, instead of finding a way. And it doesn't mean a microphone, it doesn't mean a video, it could be a blog post, it could be a newsletter email that you put out. You don't have to be comfortable in this type of media. I get that, but find a way. So there is always an avenue. And in this day and age with Chat GPT, if I say, help me tell this story, here's what happened, and you spend literally 60 seconds telling your phone, it will write the blog post for you. So the
Yeah.
excuse that, great, how do we leverage that personality trait that you have to tell the story a different way? Because if I choose the video medium, well, not everybody's video. Somebody likes to read. So maybe you're the chiropractor that could write it instead of speak it. There just has to be a way. I think it's part of our responsibility. Doctor means to teach. And so if we're always, and that would be the last thing I would say, is that I think a lot of chiropractors and practitioners just in general miss the opportunity to tell the story because they're too busy.
Yeah.
They're too busy doing instead of breathing a little bit. And maybe it's once a week to, even if you're just telling the story in your team meeting of what's a patient win for the week, so that each CA, each doctor gets a chance to share. And then it elevates the team's mission. It fires up the conviction and certainty that it doesn't even have to be outward spreading of the message. It can be inward telling the story at your dinner table with your kids, at your team meetings. There's just, it's essential. It's a
Yes.
necessary part of growing as a person, as a business, and as a collective.
I love all of that, especially like how you said, there's different media formats. Most of my favorite people are very, very introverted. You know, my favorite person on earth is my husband, and I tell him, hey, we're going out. And his immediate response is going to be, oh, don't make me do it. So we need all of these personalities. We need all of these media styles. I love what you said too about delegating that who not how idea from Dan Sullivan. And it is that idea that even if it is, you have that team meeting and you talk about that patient win, and maybe you have a CA who loves to talk and she's the one who does the video, and you make sure that you get that, or you film the patient testimonial. You have that ring light and device set up and everybody knows that's the story station where people can just film their 30 seconds right there. You mentioned AI, which is really cool. And I always tell people you can even set up your prompts so that it sounds more like you. Take something that you've written. It's essential. Have a whole series of prompts. Take something that you've written and say, extract my brand voice, write a brand voice description. This is me. I use all of these emojis. I talk like this. I use adjectives. I use adverbs. Sprinkle them in like salt. And then when you go in, pro tip, I love using Claude AI, Claude.ai. You can save it as a project. You go to that project and say, all of those things I told you before, still true. Now, I have this story. Write me a blog post. And then you say, take that blog post, make it into 3 social media posts. Then take that, make me an email newsletter. It needs to be more conversational. And I want the blog post informative. We can do this. We can do this. We can delegate. We can find a way.
Well, and I think there's resistance maybe to technology sometimes, or learning new things. I just, I love when Gary Vee says that, social media is not bad. Social media is just exposing our weaknesses and who we are. And it can be, I don't think that AI is inherently bad. It's the way we interface with it. And it's a tool for massive impact. Massive. Like we've never, you think about one of our main guys in chiropractic, BJ Palmer. I constantly think about what would he be doing with the power of AI right now. I mean, he wrote books upon books upon books and had a radio station and did all of these things in a time where none of this, advertised like crazy. That guy told the story. If he had access to social media and AI, he'd be the Hormozy of the healthcare world. I have no doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we could keep going for hours, so we'll probably have to do it another time too. But I want to put in the show notes ways that people can connect with you. Where do you like to hang out? What's the best ways for people to connect with you?
Social media wise, Instagram is probably the best place to find me. And I'll definitely share the Lighthouse is the chiropractic office that I'm at in Wichita, Kansas. And then we do online and in-person events through the Big Idea. So I'll share a few different links. I'd love
Yeah.
I love hugs. Aside from chiropractic, hugs are my favorite form of medicine. So if I ever get to meet you, make sure that we get a hug.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that you do a great job of bridging that gap between digital world and reality, where you aren't just in a digital place, you're in a real physical space. And I know that that's so important. So we will put all of the ways to connect. But thank you for sharing this today. Thank you for just like you said, I'm pretty sure we need a new t-shirt. Hope is an active rebellion. Thank you for the vulnerability and bravery of sharing these stories and just opening your heart to the world.
Thank you, Miss Jenna, for all of the gifts that you share with all of us. Appreciate you.
It's my pleasure.